You're fired. DOD is now going to be reformed. Our military will be great again, and America will never back down.
You got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. Obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, General Admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go.
Donald Trump getting ready to tell the bad generals out there, you're fired. Mark Milley probably very upset about that, experiencing white rage because his beloved DOD is now going to be reformed from what they turned it into. Now, here's what the Wall Street Journal is reporting. Trump is drafting an executive order that would create a board to purge the generals, and it would fast track the removal of admirals and everybody who's coming in. And this reminds me of exactly what we saw with RFK Jr. And he had that interview with Joe Polish on the Joe Polish Show at the Genius Network channel. And he was explaining right now they're staffing up. They're going to have 600 people that when they come in, 600 people are fired and 600 people are coming in. That's just with health. And I haven't heard any of the same conversations about what's happening in the other domains. But yeah, if it's happening in health, you got to imagine it's happening with the military. So they're not happy about it. And you can see they're considering an executive order that would establish what they call a warrior board. It's going to be retired senior military personnel with the power to actually review 3- and 4-star officers and to recommend the removals if they're deemed unfit for leadership. So a warrior board would come in, senior personnel, and they could just get rid of them. Now, we also saw that he's bringing in this guy, Pete Hegseth, who is going to be the new Secretary of Defense. And this one surprised some people. And he's being lambasted by people like Senator Warren, Pocahontas, for appearing on Fox News and failing, neglecting, misleading people, and not mentioning any of his prior service or his pedigree, which is vast. But here's what Trump said about this guy. Pete Hegseth says, "I'm excited to have him serve as the cabinet as the Secretary of Defense. He spent his entire life as a warrior for the troops and for the country. Pete is tough, smart, true believer in America first. With Pete at the helm, America's enemies are on notice. Our military will be great again, and America will never back down. Pete is a graduate of Princeton and has a graduate degree from Harvard." Okay. He's an Army combat veteran who did tours in Guantanamo Bay, Iraq, and Afghanistan. For his actions on the battlefield, he was decorated with 2 Bronze Stars, as well as a combat infantryman's badge. Pete has been a Fox News host for 8 years, where he used that platform to fight for our military and veterans. He wrote a book recently called The War on Warriors, spent 9 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, including 2 weeks at #1. The book reveals the left-wing betrayal of our warriors and how we must return our military to a meritocracy, lethality, accountability, and excellence. Pete has also led 2 veterans advocacy organizations, leading the fight for our warriors and our great veterans. Nobody fights harder for the troops, and Pete will be a courageous and patriotic champion of our peace through strength policy. So that's a nice explanation of who this person is. Some people are unhappy about it, but this is what this guy sounds like. He was on with the Sean Ryan Show podcast, and this was this conversation.
There's a chance to course correct it, but it would take the new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. Obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, General Admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it, and that's the only litmus test we care about. You got to get DEI and CRT out of military academies, so you're not training young officers to be baptized in this type of thinking. And then, whatever the standards, whatever the combat standards were, say, in, 1995, let's just make those the standards. And as far as recruiting, to hire the guy that, did Top Gun Maverick and create some real ads that motivate people to want to serve. And there's lots of other ways in which you could identify who gets promoted and what, but there's an ethos change. There's a reason people don't want to serve, because they don't trust that their senior leaders are going to have their best interest in mind in combat. I know there were mistakes made on our tours all over the place, but I at least, for the most part, had a sense that my senior leaders were committed to the completion of the mission for the right reasons. And maybe there were strategic differences and all that other stuff, and it wasn't always perfect, and that trust is broken. And you have to reestablish that trust by putting in no-nonsense warfighters in those positions who aren't going to cater to the socially correct garbage.
All right, that sounds pretty dang good to me. I'm not a military veteran, but from what we've been observing on the outside as civilians, seems like that makes good policy sense, the opposite of what the current administration is doing. So we're looking forward to seeing what he is going to be doing on this. Now, here is what he posted. This is a photograph of him. He says, "Not Tim Walz in Iraq." There's Pete right there. And some people are unhappy about it. People like Elizabeth Warren are saying, he's a Fox News host. How could you possibly have him come out and lead us? But we'll see what happens in the Senate. They'll confirm him in short order, and he'll take the helm. We're looking forward to seeing what happens with that.